Hello everyone and welcome to online lecture series of Gokhale Education Society's BYK College of Commerce Nashik. In this video, we shall be discussing class 11 English textbook and it would be first unit 1.1 being neighborly. I am Dr. Mrs. Sneha Ratnaparki from Department of English. Let me tell you friends, this first chapter was omitted during the 2 years of pandemic. However, yours is the first batch that would be discussing and studying one of the most famous and celebrated novels of American literature. That is, let us see the original source of this Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. During the earlier century, the present novel became very famous as it shows the lives of four sisters who had the surname March: Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy. It's a story of how middle class society people used to live during those days and what positivity their mother, that is, Mrs. March, gave them. Let us see something about the author. Louisa May Alcott is one of the most famous American novelists and short story writers. She used to write earlier with her pen name A.M. Bernard. The present novel is said to have her own childhood experiences with her three sisters. Perhaps that is why it became very famous. Little Women became famous within a short spell of time, and it is heartening to see that the novel has been adapted for the abridged version for children literature, and it is even adapted for series and movies. Friends, there are two movies available on Netflix based on the novel Little Women. Before we begin with the chapter, let me ask you a few questions. So, this is my basic question. What is the most important thing for you? Think about all the options: money, fame, success, satisfaction, family, relations. So, when we see all these options, we automatically, obviously, take one of the most loved options for each individual. Little Women is the novel that offers all these options and at the end tells us which is the real one and which is or which should be the most valued one. In our textbook, we have only one chapter of the entire novel. The central idea of the extract that we are going to study is the relationship between Joe and Laurie, that is, Master Theodore Lawrence. The chapter depicts how both of them create genuine and pure friendship between both of them and what it matters. It is actually the beginning of a lifelong friendship between Joe, who is the brightest and liveliest of the four sisters, and obviously Laurie, their very rich neighbor. The March girls and Laurie actually become best buddies and much more as the book progresses. So it would be a pleasure to see how their friendship grows and what Laurie means to all the March sisters and what role he plays in the entire lifespan of these March sisters. Let us see the main characters. Mommy, that is how the March sisters fondly call their mother, that is Mrs. March. Her four daughters, Meg, Jo, Beth, whose real name is Elizabeth, Amy, the youngest one, and Aunt March, aunt of father of these four sisters. At another side, we have rich family, that is their neighbor, Mr. Lawrence, who is an old gentleman with pure tender heart, and his grandson, Theodore Lawrence, who is fondly called as Laurie. Friends, it is very important to see the setting of each novel or each story that we read because the setting adds into the theme and overall presentation of each story. The setting of Little Women or even the extract that we are going to study has Concord, Massachusetts, from the USA. This beginning chapter that we are going to study has winter. Recently, Christmas has been celebrated at both the houses. It's a wartime. Their father is at the war front, though he is not fighting actually. He has gone there to give his moral services as the one who would have spirituality and boost the morale of the soldiers. All the daughters miss him much, however, they try to fight their fears. That is, they fear whether their father would come home back. They fight it along with their mother. So, their mother is their main pillar, main lighthouse, who gives them inspiration and positivity throughout. Before the chapter that we are going to read, there are two chapters where entire March family is introduced, what positivity and simplicity they possess is given. Particularly, the Christmas chapter is very interesting, where these four daughters decide to spend whatever money they are given to buy gifts for their mothers. Their mother has taught them how to live selfless life, kind life, so they depict the same when they buy gifts for their mother. Actually, on the Christmas day, when they are waiting for her to be with them, she is not there. The real reason is that there is a very poor family where there are six children who are suffering from severe cold as it is the month of December. It is Christmas time. Their mother has given birth to seventh child. The child is crying because of the lack of milk which is there. And obviously, Mrs. March, being very humble, very kind, she goes there to help the newborn baby and its mother, and even the six children. These four sisters, when they come to know about all this, they sacrifice their Christmas breakfast. They give it to those six children. They come with blankets and all, and that is how they celebrate Christmas in real sense, where Christmas means sharing and caring. So, this is how Mars sisters are very loving, very kind, and they love each other the most. Now, let us see the actual chapter that we have being neighborly. When the chapter begins, we have Meg, who's reading Ivanhoe, a very famous fiction, and we see Joe, who is a very tomboyish kind of a girl who loves to go out. So, though it is afternoon, though it has to be very cozy in the house because outside there's snow, she decides to go out and try some adventure. So, we see Joe here who is very extrovert, who loves to take risks, and who loves adventures. So, though Meg says that it is not good to go out, Joe declines and she says that I don't like to be a pussycat sitting all the time at home with all those cozy things. I love to adventure, I love to explore. And in this way, she goes out. She starts clearing the driveway and the entire area where it is completely covered by snow. As you all know, during winters it is very difficult in the west to walk properly without clearing the snow. So she is doing it for the entire family. And she has a very loving thought. She says that when Beth and Amy would come out of the house and when they wish to play here, it should be hassle free for them, and that is why I am doing it. Every step we see these sisters thinking about each other. Now, when she is doing this, she suddenly looks at the Lawrence mansion and she realizes that she so wishes to enter there, not just because of the richness of the house, but because of the one person who stays over there. She thinks that Laurie, who has recently come to stay with his grandfather, is very lonely. He needs company. His grandfather does not know what is good for him, and actually, Mr. Lawrence keeps him shut in the room always. That is how Joe thinks about it. So she thinks he needs company, he needs friends of his age, he needs to have great time with them. And this entire idea amuses Joe. And she thinks that I should go at once and talk to him and make friendship with him. This is a genuine effort to have friendship with the neighbors because the entire March family, though they have settled down there recently, they love to meet everybody else over there and they are in good terms with their neighbors except for the Lawrence family. Obviously, because Lawrence family is a rich family and perhaps they don't mingle with the rest of the people. So she constantly thinks that it is such a poor thing that Laurie is not able to mix up with all of us. He should. And then she has an idea. She tries to peep into where the entire vicinity of the mansion is and she tries to see whether she can check on anybody. There's nobody in the house, of course, on the ground floor. However, she suddenly finds Laurie sitting at the gallery and he is very sad. He's just peeping around, he's just looking around, and he looks nonplussed. She wishes to have friendship with him. So, without thinking, because she doesn't have anything else with her, she pops up a snowball at him. Looking at the ball, suddenly Laurie becomes excited and there's a twinkle, there's a shine in his eyes. He looks up at Joe. She waves at him and they start communicating from the place itself. So Laurie is in the balcony near the window and Joe is standing there down. They start talking. She asks, how do you do? Are you sick? And he tries to explain his condition, though he is not well. He has a hoarse voice. Like, when we are not well, we also don't have a proper level of pitch of our voice. The same way, Laurie is not able to speak properly. He says, I'm better, thank you. I've had a bad cold and I've been shut up a week. Now, look at this. I have been shut up. Means I'm locked in this room for the entire week. She feels sorry. She says, I'm so sorry. What do you amuse yourself with? Means, how do you entertain yourself? He says, it is as dull as tombs up here. Tombs, obviously, where dead bodies are buried. It means that Laurie is not enjoying his stay there in the room all alone, exactly as Joe had thought. She tries to cheer him up. She says, don't you read? And constantly she is trying to hint at how she would be able to help, rather, how happy she would be to help him. So she says, you must read. He says, I cannot read because I am not well, and grandfather does not allow me to constantly read. Then she says, then have somebody to read you. He says, I can't tell my tutor to read for me, and my grandfather does not have interest in my kind of books, because he is a teenager and grandfather perhaps does not like to listen to or read to such stories. She says, then call somebody, call the boys, your friends. He has the answer like, boys make such a row, boys disturb the house in such a way that it is chaotic, it is completely disordered, and I am not well, my head is weak, so it disturbs me. She says, then call a nice girl. And now she is directly hinting at that you should call a girl, maybe Joe, maybe Meg, somebody from the house, so that they could enter the house and she could chat with him. He says, I don't know any girl, any nice girl. She says, you know us. And then Laurie finally invites her. So Joe, very much eager to enter the house, is trying to hint at how Laurie would invite her. Finally, he invites, and she says that I am not actually quiet and nice. I am a very extrovert person. However, I'll just ask my mother if she allows me. I'll definitely come to entertain you, to give you some good company. And with that, she enters the house back. This little gentleman now, Laurie, is very excited that he definitely would be having a guest with him. Somebody who would entertain him, somebody who would give him a very pure, heartening company. Immediately after a few minutes, Joe comes, but she comes with some gifts. What are they? Now look at the compassion entire March family has. Mother says that you should give company to this little gentleman. He is a little gentleman, and whoever is sick, you obviously should give company and should make the person feel better. So that compassion comes actually from their marmy, from Mrs. March, and then that is percolated in all the daughters. So when she comes, Jo has with her a dish which is prepared by Meg. Meg has prepared blanc mange, as you can see in the picture. It's kind of a pudding thing. Why has she brought that? She says that you have a sour throat, you can't eat properly, you can't gulp properly. So Meg thought that this would give you proper appetite also, and you would feel better because you don't have to chew and gulp with much difficulty. So she gives that blancmange. She has Beth's kitten. Beth has sent kitten because she thought that this small boy would have some entertainment if he looks at such creatures. Amy has plants in the garden, so she has used that to decorate the dish blancmange. And obviously, Mrs. March has sent love. This way, entire March family has tried to make Laurie happy. And Laurie leaves his bashfulness, his shyness, and finally becomes happy and extrovert and starts sharing things with Joe. So, this is the moment where their friendship starts. Now, when Laurie is eating blancmange, he starts his conversation and he asks about what she does throughout the day, what about her education and all. So they talk on various topics. When she gets the question like, what is your education, or do you go to school? She says, I don't go to school. I am a business woman. Business woman in the sense, I am working. And while this conversation goes on, she looks at the entire parlor. Now, in American culture, parlor means the private individual room of anybody. So she looks around. She's very happy with the richness of the books he has. He says, I'm not happy actually. I have read almost all of them, and now I'm not allowed to read much. She thinks the room is cozy. He thinks that the room is untidy. He complains that Lawrence family has six almost servants, but none of them takes care of the room properly and they don't keep the room tidy. She says it takes hardly 2 minutes, and then within 2 minutes, like a gentle lady, she keeps the room tidy, she makes it proper, she changes the arrangement of the furniture also where light would properly come, and this way The room now looks very tidy, very clean, very fresh. Obviously, this makes Laurie feel fresher. Then they talk about education, and when Joe says that I work, Laurie wishes to know more about it. However, he feels that it is not good to probe into somebody's private life in the first meeting itself. He is a thorough gentleman, he knows the mannerisms, so he doesn't ask much. However, Joe thinks that he needs to know, or rather, he is such a nice boy, such a gentleman, he knows the manners, so it is his right to know something about my personal life which would definitely amuse him. She starts telling all the things about how she goes to Aunt March. Aunt March, as it is already mentioned, is her father's aunt. She goes there because the old lady needs company. She starts telling what all she does there, how she reads to the old lady, what all household things she does, how she enjoys being in the library of Aunt March, and even she shares one of the most funny incidents where an aged person had come to propose Aunt March, but he had a wig on his head, he had false hair, and when the parrot of the house came and took away the wig, it was all funny incident, and obviously the proposal was turned down. This makes Laurie very amused. He cannot control his laughter. Eventually, he forgets his illness and he starts enjoying the company of Joe all the more. This is how they keep conversing with each other. Joe keeps on telling him that you should shed your shyness, you should be more talkative, you should mingle with people more. So, in this way, she is a friend who would give positive things, positive sides of characteristic or nature to her friend. So, this is what is genuine friendship. Then, when she talks like my sister Beth tells me that unless and until somebody tells you to stop talking, you will never stop. Laurie says Beth is the one who goes with a basket outside for some market things, right? She says yes. And the pretty one is Meg. I guess she has curly hair. And the youngest one is Emmy, I suppose. Now, when Joe listens to the entire description, she says, how is it that you know all my sisters so well? Laurie colors up, he feels shy, but then later on he says that, I often see you all calling each other when you are in the garden. And one more important thing, I must confess, this is not actually mannered behavior, but then I beg your pardon. But sometimes you forget to put down the curtain at the window where the flowers are, and when the lamps are lighted in the evening, I keep on peeping through the window because it is open window. I can see that, but I must say, whatever I look at, it's like looking at a picture to see the fireside and you all around the table with your mother. So it's a very perfect picture for me. I don't have my mother. And whenever I look at Mrs. March, I feel, this is how mother should be. She is full of compassion, she's full of light, she's full of positivity. So when I look at her, I feel the compassion. And then there is solitary, lonely, hungry look in his eyes. This is the moment where Joe realizes what real richness means. Though she entered the mansion, Lawrence mansion, to look at the rich furniture, to look at the entire wealth of the Lawrence family, she realizes she is richer to Laurie at this moment. Laurie longs for family. I already have a loving, affectionate family. So I'm richer to him. This is where she realizes what is more important is not your wealth or your material things, but your family, your relations, your friends. And This gives her a chance to decide without the permission of her entire family that from now onwards we will never draw the curtains. Whenever you wish to peep through the window, you are free to do. My mother is very splendid, so obviously she will not mind, and my sisters would help me when I would be telling them all the things about how you feel about the entire family and how you long to have mother. So definitely we will not draw the curtain, and you are welcome. Rather, you can come to our house anytime you feel like. So it's an open invitation from Joe's side. She has the confidence, she has the faith in her entire family also. This is how family bond is. You know, whatever good you would do, your family is always with you, your family will always support you. And because Mrs. March is herself the statue of or the symbol of affection, she has taught the same to all the daughters. That's why they are also very loving, very affectionate to each and everyone. Then Joe says, you should come to our house, of course, if your grandfather allows you. He says he's a good gentleman, It's the only thing that he is old person and he's all the time busy. He thinks that I am all alone in the house, so I should not go to strangers or neighbors and I should not disturb them. It's only that my grandfather wants me to have proper manners. Otherwise, he's a good person. Are you afraid of my grandfather? She says, no, no, not at all. I'm not afraid of your grandfather. Rather, I am not afraid of anybody. Then the conversation goes on and they talk about the wonderful library that Lawrence family has. So Laurie takes her to the library of the Lawrence mansion. He is not much amused to see because it's his original thing, routine thing, whereas Joe is completely bewitched, completely mesmerized to see such wonderful, rich library. For her, more than the furniture, what is the emblem of or symbol of richness is these wonderful books. So she enjoys it completely and she starts observing all the details there, the sleepy hollow chair, the queer table, the statues which are there, the fireplace which is wonderful over there. She enjoys the ambience of the library. She feels she can spend her entire life at such place. So Joe is a person who is very extrovert, who loves adventure, who loves nature, who loves going out of the house. Yet at the same time, she enjoys literature. She enjoys being all alone. She enjoys being peaceful with herself. When they are at the library, there's a knock on the door, on the main door of the mansion. Joe is suddenly alert. So Laurie says, I guess it is my grandfather. Joe says, okay, let that be. I'm not afraid of your grandfather. Constantly, she is trying to say, I'm not afraid of your grandfather very casually. But perhaps at the back of her mind, there's fear that perhaps she has the fear or respect for Mr. Lawrence. She is a girl of 15 years, and obviously, she must have seen Mr. Lawrence working hard for his business and being very mannered and very quiet person. But yet, here, constantly she says, I'm not afraid of Mr. Lawrence, let him come. However, it is actually the doctor who has come to check on Laurie. So Laurie says, I'll just be here in a while. He goes out of the room. She starts getting amused with the books. She keeps on reading all the details. And when she reads all those things, there's a pat on her back. She says, oh, you came so early. And she goes on looking at all the details, and suddenly she comes at a painting of Mr. Lawrence. She enjoys looking at it and she keeps on giving her observations about it. She says that, your grandfather looks very serious over here. Maybe he has this stature, that stature. I've heard about him. Um, I'm not sure that I shouldn't be afraid of him because there's some kindness in his eyes. Though I may say that I worry him, but there is some kindness in his eyes which is very inviting, and he is not definitely as handsome as my grandfather, but I think I like him. When she is giving the entire observation or her opinion, suddenly she listens to a dialogue like, "Thank you, ma'am." It's a serious voice, it's a gruff voice. Immediately she turns back and she finds old Mr. Lawrence standing before her. Poor Jo, she is completely embarrassed and she becomes redder. Her heart begins to beat uncomfortably fast and she cannot immediately say anything. For a minute, she feels like running away from that place. But she resolves to stay. She gathers her courage and she stands there itself. There is a twinkle in his eyes that tells her that though old Mr. Lawrence looks very serious, perhaps he is not so. She decides to take the risk, she decides to face the music. So she stands there itself. Mr. Lawrence starts conversing with her. He says, "So you are not afraid of me?" She very bravely says, "Not much, sir." Now it is obviously very difficult to face such situation where you are not invited by Mr. Lawrence. You have already entered in his absence. Now he is standing there, a rich person, a successful businessman, and you have entered without permission into his private library also. You are standing very much there and giving opinion like he is not handsome. Still, she stays there. She says, "I'm not afraid of you." This is what Joe is all about. Risk taking factor is very much there in her. He says, "So I am not handsome like your grandfather." She keeps on answering all those questions. She says, "Not much, sir." She says, "Not quite, sir." He says, "I have got a tremendous will, you think?" "Yes, sir." I said, "I thought so." So, in spite of all these things, Mr. Lawrence says, "Do you still like me?" He says, "Yes, sir, I do like you." And this pleases Mr. Lawrence. He starts laughing and he touches Joe very affectionately. He lifts her chin up to see the face. He examines and he says, "You know, girl, you have got your grandfather's spirit, but you haven't got his face." The reason that he clearly states this with confidence is because Mr. Lawrence and the maternal grandfather of Joe, they were best friends. So he says, "I know your grandfather very well. He was a pure gentleman, a very daring person, I must say, and your mother is just like him. And perhaps that is why you all are like him eventually." She thanks him, and obviously, Mr. Lawrence asks, "What have you been doing to this boy of mine? What were you doing here?" Joe says, "Only trying to be neighborly, sir." This is where the title appears, where she states her intention that I wanted to be neighborly, I wanted to be friendly. That is why I had come here. Then he asks, "Do you think you have cheered him up a bit, at least a bit?" She says, "Yes, he seems lonely. He needs to mix up with people of his age. He should come out." Very bravely, she says that you have locked him up here. He shouldn't feel lonely. He should come out. He should mix with people. He should come to us. He agrees to that and he praises how their mother also worked splendidly on that particular Christmas day, and how she has given all the nice things and habits to the daughters as well. They finish their conversation and Joe leaves from there, and this is how the entire chapter ends. So the chapter presents three major characters which we actually read about in the chapter, whom we meet in the chapter, which they are Joe, Laurie, and Mr. Lawrence. However, Mrs. March, Meg, Beth, Amy, Aunt March are also talked of. So, when we answer questions, we need to know what major and minor characters are there in the entire novel and in this particular chapter. So, when we think of the chapter, what is our takeaway from it? These are the 3 points we should keep in mind. Real richness is the family actually. Compassion is the greatest virtue. Never think twice before helping others. Our modern lives have constrained us so much that we don't think of others, we don't mix up with them with genuine feelings. We should do it often so that our lives and their lives become more positive. I hope you have understood the gist of the entire chapter. If you read it, you'll enjoy it more. And it would be a happier thing for me as a teacher if you go and find the original novel Little Women or at least watch the movie Little Women, which would give you more pleasure. Happy reading, friends.